Welcome, everybody. Today is Thursday, June 15th. We are in the beginning of the thick of summer. A lot of people are coming and going with vacations and holidays. I am, as you can tell, not in my regular office. Over my right shoulder, I've got a little red apple, and over my left shoulder, I've got a flag. So I'm at a school. We have programs called STEM Camp, and they're all over the country. We've got 10 different locations across the country. And I'm in North Carolina today. And in 2 weeks, you'll see me in probably an equally crazy and diverse location in New Jersey doing the same kind of a thing. Today, we're talking about revenue mix. The basic idea here is I'm hoping you create a mix of different kinds of ways of bringing money into your firm so that you never find yourself in a situation where you have not enough money to make it through, because that's the big idea. My story, my original story was I worked for a university and they were going on hard times, and I was a director of institutional research. And they had it was a very small institution, and they had a very small budget, and they started to have some issues. And I was convinced that if they didn't figure out their issues, I was going to be out of a job, and it scared me. Anyway, they did figure out their issues, and I did leave that small institution. Fast forward a couple of years, and I started my consulting firm, and I put just about all of my resources, all of my contracts were from math and science partnership grants from the U.S. Department of Education. And it was wonderful. I had a wonderful thing going with all my clients. I was doing all the right things you're supposed to do. And well, the statewide evaluator decided she should do all the evaluations for all of the local programs. And I was a local program evaluator, and she effectively cut me out of future programs. And I had a panic attack trying to figure out what I was supposed to do, because I didn't have enough revenue diversity or enough mix in my revenue. And so that became the conversation in my own head that I'm going to really share for the first time through this presentation. I mostly put this together last night, PowerPoint wise, but I've been thinking about it for a good 13 years. So let's see where we go with this. So if you're joining us by YouTube today, and you only have 5 minutes, here's the 5 minutes, quick summary. Remember, when you're thinking about your revenue and when you want to expand the ways that you're bringing in revenue, you start with who you are and what you're supposed to do. What is your niche? You want to make sure you know who you are, what you're good at, what you enjoy, where there's money, and what you're trying to contribute back to the world. And just keep that in mind as you're trying to expand out. Ways to expand: stagger your contract lengths, make sure they're not all ending at the same time. I mean, I know it feels impossible, but to the degree you can do that, seek out projects that are going to be short-term, medium-term, and longer-term. I have a lot of 5-year grants, gives me a lot of opportunity, or 5-year contracts that are on 5-year grants. That gives me an opportunity for longer projects. Think about selling more than one type of product or service. Most of us do program evaluation. There's a lot of different things out there. Think about working with different types of clients. The variety of clients are important. For me, I work with a lot of K-12 school districts, but I also work with universities and different things like that. Broaden your variety of funding organizations. So whereas sometimes your funding organization and your client are the same, for me, my clients get funding from a funding organization like the National Science Foundation. So think about different ways that you can support programs that are coming from different sources of revenue. And I'm gonna go into a lot more detail on all of this, so don't feel like this is it. And then the big idea is to create passive income that comes in. And so ways to do that are to A, we're all doing it with investments. B, create a practice that's self-sustaining, that people are creating income and you can support that process. But also the big idea for me is to create some sort of a intellectual property that is low maintenance, that will continue to bring money into the firm. All right, so that's the quick summary. Let's go into the details of all of these things I just said. For those of you guys who just had 5 minutes, I'll see you guys later. I'm going to keep going here. So when I talk about niche, I'm often talking about Jim Collins' idea, he calls it the hedgehog concept of the three overlapping circles of doing what you love, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. And if you focus on all those three things, really you're gonna you're gonna find sustainability in your projects. If you're starting to work with a client that you don't love that type of work, but you're good at and you can be paid for it, it's not going to be sustaining. If you're doing what you love and something you're good at, and there's no money for that type of work, well, you may find yourself not successful in that type of work because there won't be anybody to pay for it. I always said that I like history so much, and civics education would be where I'd like to do more program evaluation. There's not a lot of money for civics education. I also love STEM education, and I'm good at program evaluation and STEM education. And there's a lot of funding for STEM education. So that's where I find myself, including today, doing STEM camp, which is for kids of active military personnel. By the way, there's a lot of money in the Department of Defense for STEM education. So you can see I found my niche in what I love, and that's alignment. Now you can tell there's a fourth circle missing. What I also like to talk about is the ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese word, and this is kind of an Americanization of the ikigai idea, but I also feel like because we're in the social services type, we support social services type of organizations. Most of our clients are trying to do something through the government or through a nonprofit to really, for a better way of putting it, make the world a better place. We're all trying to save the world. What are we doing that is what the world needs? So if you can make sure in all this conversation we're having, you're focusing in the center of the overlap of all these four circles, that's the big idea. So that should be your niche. And so as we're talking about, and I'm pressuring you to do, you're having the pressure to do new and different things, you always have to go back to this niche and make sure that you're doing these things that you love, where you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. All right, so let's talk about some of these ideas. Oh yeah, there's the middle of the four circles. Contract lengths. So here's an example for me. This isn't an exact example. Apparently the power just went out in the building. I'm going to keep going. You can still see my screen, but I'm in the dark. Anyhow, the contract lengths, to the degree you can, I'm only showing longer term contracts here, but you want to have a mix of different types of contracts. Ones that last, for me, 5 years, 3 years, and we have 1 year contracts, or contracts that last just a couple of months based upon just an immediate need. I'm always impressed by like the grant professionals who I meet who never seem to have anything longer than 3 months. I think I would have a panic attack if I had to constantly be regenerating new work. And it's a lot of work to generate new contracts and create new clients and new contacts. Perhaps it's a lot more money. I would rather take the longer perspective and create a lot of longer term contracts and then support that with shorter term contracts that are perhaps worth a little bit more money. But I guess everything's still working with my internet. All the electricity went off. Oh, I know what it is. I'm in one of those rooms where the lights go off if you don't move around enough. Anyhow, I think everything's fine here. But the long and the short of it is the idea is make sure you have revenue coming in over time. I know a lot of people who will start up and have 3 contracts that are 5 years long, and they all start at the same time and they end at the same time, and they're not doing their work on marketing to keep the work going. And so after the 3 years, they find themselves scrambling to try and find new work. You got to be aware of when your contracts are ending and make sure you have work that's going to continue to start. You can't ever stop putting yourself out there and talking to people. You also may want to think about doing different types of services. So while most of us on the left do evaluation, some other ideas are to do things aside from evaluation. Evaluation lends itself very much towards strategic planning, needs assessments. We just finished a needs assessment for a large university in our community, which will lead to hopefully a big grant for them. They are doing the needs assessment as a piece of the grant proposal. And then when they get the grant, then we would be their program evaluators. But there's lots of strategic planning. Grant writing is something a lot of people do support for data. A lot of us do data analysis. It's typical for what we do. And then, of course, training and speaking. In fact, training and speaking may be a profitable business, but it also may be a process for your marketing. Make sure you have a variety of clients. So in the beginning for me, I was working with ROE 40, which is a regional office of education in Southern Illinois. Then I started working with Cahokia and SIU Edwardsville, O'Fallon Township High School. And then I usually use this slide as an example of how you create new and different relationships by connecting with your clients. But here's a lot of our clients that we're working with right now, but there is a variety of people who are involved here. We've got the University of Chicago, which is a very well-known research institution in Chicago. We've got SIU Edwardsville, which is also a university, but it's a regional institution with more of a focus towards teaching and regional needs. Then you also see I've got O'Fallon Township High School. That is a high school district, specifically 9 through 12. And you'll also see that I've got nonprofits in here, the Regional Office of Education, the Illinois Biotechnology Innovation Organization. So there's a variety, and the beauty here as far as revenue stability and revenue mix is that they're going after different types of grants, different types of relationships that I have with them. It's a lot, but I also have a staff now, so this would be too much for me to manage by myself at this point. But I do have a relationship with with somebody at every one of these institutions. But what had always scared me about working as an employee is I had one client effectively. I worked for that university, and I had reasonable sense that I was good at what I was doing, and I had a great relationship with my boss. But that was one relationship, and if that relationship ever soured, I'd lose my job, and then I would have nothing. What I have here, what we have effectively now is 50 some odd projects that we're doing with our firm. That's 50 effectively. That's reinforcement that if one of those goes wrong, we have additional 49 projects that can help support and pick up the slack if we had something go wrong. What goes wrong? Well, hopefully it's not because I've created there's a poor relationship there. Usually that's not the case. Usually it's something that's happening with their funding. Who knows? We're always wondering about what's happening in Washington, D.C. with funding and whether that's going to continue to go. I don't know why it won't, but also there's a lot of things that happen with politics that I continue to scratch my head around. So it's important. We did have a client a couple years ago who just they got tired of us telling them what they needed to hear because we were paid to do a program evaluation, and they were not doing a very good job. And they decided they didn't want to work with us anymore. It was an unfortunate circumstance, and I wish they would listen to us, but they did let us go. And I said, well, good riddance in many ways. I didn't have to worry about it, but because I had a variety of different clients. And then this year, we also signed a contract, a really large contract. I did a little bit of budget planning around using those funds, and then they didn't come through, and it was painful. It was a substantial amount of money, but we were able to absorb it from other projects. And so we did plan for that by having a variety of clients. Related to this, you want to make sure you have a variety of funders, okay? So here's where the funding comes from to support the projects at my clients. So the National Science Foundation is a major one for us. DoD STEM, that's funding the program I'm at right now. I'm the principal investigator for that. DoDEA up here in the upper right. So our DoDEA program officer is actually here. I just met with her, and she's touring our STEM camp today. We get a lot of funds from Department of Education. We just started a project with NASA, and we just started a project with SAMHSA. Those are two new ones for me. But you'll also see those are all federal government funds. Now they're from different departments, and so sometimes we think we've heard there's a lack of support for science, which if that means NSF funds are going to go down and lack of funds for education, that would be sad. Sometimes we hear that perhaps the Department of Education may be defunded. Who knows with politics if that's going to happen? Typically, If you can get in with the Department of Defense and you can maintain funds, Department of Defense continues to be supported by both sides of the aisle, as they say it, and DoDEA is also the Department of Defense. I also like to support that with nonprofits like Swarovski or foundations or the Lilly Endowment. Those are different, smaller amounts that we receive, and we also have a state organization that funds us. So that's the way we think about our funder variety. All right, let's see what we got next one. Finally, passive income. This is the big idea. The main way you're going to create passive income is by creating what Michael Michalowicz calls as a clockwork business. Get your business up to run itself. And so if there's ever a time to work yourself out of a job, it's when you own a consulting firm. Now, I know a lot of you guys are one-person operations, so you're not quite there, but you do want to create, even if you're a one-person operation, you want to find a way to simplify your processes so that your operations work. Little things you can do is set up your business so that you're reusing different types of forms, different types of surveys. You're going to tailor things to your clients, of course, but make sure things are working as easily for you so that you can do more work and you can bring in more clients and have effectively more revenue. We're hopeful, we would love to develop software that is self-sustaining, where it has little in the way of like regular maintenance on our part, meaning little in the way of our time to keep the software running. Perhaps we'll do a little bit each year, but we want to do that with at-risk students at school districts. You already have passive income if you have investments. If you're investing in the stock market for your retirement, hypothetically, you're not touching that, and it's accruing until you're ready to retire. Your investments are passive. It's creating income without you having to do anything. In fact, when I talk to people who are thinking about starting a business and they say, "I'd like to start a restaurant," I'd like to open up a bar. I tell them, I say, save your money, put it in the stock market. Now, of course, it's up and down, but I would put more trust in the stock market than in opening up a bar, and then take a little bit out and then go hang out at the bar of your choice, and you'll still make more money because there's so much effort and there's such a high rate of people who fail in restaurants and bars. We're in a better industry, I think, than that. But put your money in the stock market, make sure you're investing. So that's a passive income, and ultimately create some sort of intellectual property that is self-sustaining as well. So here's a couple reflections. It's pretty much a reminder of what I just said. Always start with your niche. Think about how you can create, avoid a situation where your projects end at the same time, have staggering lengths of contracts, so there's always something going on. Think about creating different services or products. Develop passive income when possible. Remember to develop relationships and create different clients, and in part, also think about different funding agencies. Okay, so that's our chat. Well, we'll go into the chat section in just a second here. Coming up next week, if you're doing a good job with all the things I just told you about, you're going to create a valuable firm. We're going to do a session next week with Patri and Gomani about buying and selling evaluation firms. I want to make a point, particularly for you guys on YouTube. We are not recording this. They've asked, they're going to talk about things that are sensitive, that are things that they don't want recorded, about the way that they I don't exactly know how they buy, how they prepare firms to be sold, how they prepare their own firms to be sold to someone else. So it's going to be a really important session. It's one I'm really looking forward to, because both Patri and Gomani have both been involved with buying consulting firms. So who knows, maybe we can sell our consulting firms to them next week. 2 weeks, we'll be talking, I'll be doing kind of a ad hoc session about 10.5 reasons why independence is awesome. Then you can see the other sessions coming up. Tosca is one of our YouTubers. She watches our shows by YouTube. She's only been on 3 years ago, like one time with us live, and she watches all of them after that. So hi, Tasca. She's actually going to be live on July 27th with us, and she's going to be talking about the art and science of content marketing. So looking forward to that. With that, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll go into the chat section.